Although I did read a story, it was a guy, he'd gone fishing with a guide, and he was one of those guys, you have to be able to cast the whole reel or you don't go with him. And he was like 15, like 10, 15 feet short, whatever. So that night he went home and pulled all the line out, cut 15 feet off, put it back together, and it was fine.
That is some creative problem solving. He deserved it at that point.
So
The guy didn't measure it, he just saw the whole spool was out, so there you go.
glass full, glass empty, change the size of the glass.
Right.
Directly into the
Or you don't
refrigerator.
succeed, adjust your goals.
Is that a juice cup you got?
Shot glass?
All right, Mike, are we good to go?
Give me
Better
just
watch
a
out.
few seconds.
But yeah, I've done a little bit of steelhead and that's fun.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I don't have
Yeah.
a mouse anymore.
But yeah, fishing is just,
But we need.
I
to
wish I had
start our
more
meeting,
time. I
Jeff.
took my daughter trout fishing a couple times.
What's she up to these days?
She is working over at Mundy's here in Moscow. And-
Mundy's Welding?
Yeah,
Oh,
yep, she's a welder and now
She is.
she's
That
considering
looks like a
going to
PB
Wawa
thing.
Community College to get an AA in egg business.
Cool.
So she wants to run her own welding shop.
One of these things, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go, yeah.
Do we even have, we don't have a welding shop in Pullman.
No, but all fab out by the airport.
Yeah.
Oh, you're almost
So you
there.
gotta go through.
That's not
Pullman.
sensitive at
It's
all.
not Anywhere up in Moscow.
Yeah,
All right, I still don't see.
yeah, cause we used to have
those.
Clay's Welding.
And Bill's
Bill's
welding.
Welding.
Yeah, and Bill's, yeah.
Yeah.
We used to go to Clay's because it was, from Viola, it was,
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was fantastic. It was easy.
those guys were fun.
Yeah.
Christensen's son's one of our mechanics,
Yes, he is.
so.
Yeah, he had been dating a
I
girl.
think that
was
kills the
working
mouse
for
every time it.
I'm gonna let you do it.
A while back, so. I met him, is it-
I think you're gonna need the mouse.
One reason it's.
And son is Jesse.
Jesse, yeah.
I think the mouse is on
Good deal.
the. Which one was it? That?
This is the camera and this.
He needs a lot of direction.
He needs direction and he is so sort of. So. It takes too long to, let's do that last week. Perfect.
Right.
Don't.
Not everything has to be perfect in this world.
No.
Yeah, that's what I tell my husband.
Jeff, are you connected to the internet?
This has to be.
Has to be up there.
Yes.
The mouse.
I'm just wondering if you can, we can put it on a laptop and just have you sign in the meeting and share the screen there instead of here.
Sounds fun.
Hey, Mike, we'll just, I can log on from one of these and then you can just put it on a laptop. and share
Yeah,
the
no,
screen
it's your
from here.
place. It just
Yeah.
seems like a pretty
Then we
nice.
get
guy,
started.
but,
Okay.
So I can see that.
I'll log in.
Yeah, you gotta,
It's gotten better though.
Let's go ahead and get started, Mike, if we can
it's not so much direction.
quit trying on that and start the meeting.
If you allow him to stray,
I know the mouse is.
all of a sudden you'll have a brand new.
Now, well,
Yeah.
if you wanna,
We,
he'll get you set up on the
in
laptop.
charge of the auto shop. All right.
All right, thank you all for your patience, appreciate,
We'll have Jeff present from Jeff Lanigan's laptop,
Yeah.
so it won't confuse anyone.
I appreciate you guys' patience. We're trying to get a presentation loaded, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. This is the April meeting for the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee, April already, holy cow. Appreciate everybody's attendance and also those online. We appreciate Jeff Lanigan going the extra mile and being online and in person. That is some real commitment, Jeff, and we appreciate
Does
it.
he get double
He
credit?
did
for
double
that?
credit.
He double
He
credit.
gets to miss one. He
Now
gets
he's
to miss one now.
He's gonna double bill us, right?
I think it's to present Jeff Langman's.
Yeah, so.
So we
Jeff
can open
Q.
up some sort of vortex in the. environment.
So anyway, yeah, so, we'll start off with introductions. I'm Tyler Palmer. I'm the current PBAC Chair and Public Works Director and Deputy City Administrator for the City of Moscow. And I am going to start, we'll go counterclockwise this time.
Paul Kimmel, Latell County Representative to PVAC and Business and Public Affairs Manager with Avista.
Eileen McCall, interested party.
Thanks, Eileen.
Chad Wetzel, Whitman County Commissioner, District 3.
Mark Story, Whitman County Public Works.
Jeff Lanigan, WCU Facilities.
Jeff Langman, UI Earth and Spatial Sciences.
Great,
Even all Latell County water activists.
great.
And Mike Falcao with PBAC.
And I'm gonna jump online. Let's start with, Michelle.
Idaho Department of Water Resources in Coeur d'Alene.
Thanks, Michelle. Commissioner Lamar?
Tom Lamar, Latah County Commissioner, a representative. I'm also the Executive Director of the Palouse Clearwater Environmental Institute, but that's not my role here.
Thanks, Tom. Luke?
Luke Kawano, Source Water Protection Specialist, Idaho Rural Water Association.
Hey, Luke. Kara?
Kara Haley, City of Pullman.
And Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick Cabbage, Washington State Department of Ecology Water Resources Program.
Thanks, Patrick. Steve?
Steve Robichon, PBAC Technical Advisor.
Thanks, Steve. Lana?
Lana Cohen, University of Idaho Water Resources Research.
Meg?
Hey, Meg Wolf. I'm with IWERI, Idaho Water Resources Research Institute at the University of Idaho, Coeur d'Alene.
Great. Welcome, Meg. All right. I think I got everybody.
I think you should get Jeff.
Not Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
We need double
Jeff
dip.
again.
I think it's his other brother, Jeff.
Yeah. All right, so for today's meeting, we've got some good agenda items. We're really moving along with several important initiatives. Also included in today's meeting, we will recess to executive session today as well, so that we can have some personnel discussions. So at that point, we'll ask everyone other than the committee members to excuse themselves, and we'll proceed with the executive session, after which we'll adjourn. So the first item on the agenda today is the approval of our March 20th meeting minutes. If anyone has any comments or would like to make a motion, we'll open the floor for that.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Kimmel.
Second.
I've got a second. Thanks, Chad. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, our minutes stand approved for our March meeting. Next item on the agenda is public comment for anything not on the agenda. That will open up the floor for any public comment. Okay, hearing none, we will move on to unfinished business, which we don't have any unfinished business today, or new business, but we do have things coming right up in the agenda. And so now we will get to the third of our three Jeffs today. We've got a presentation, discussion. What we grateful to have Professor Langman here with us today. As most of you will recall, we have a project that PBAC has contracted with Professor Langman to conduct. As we're getting to launch point on the project, we thought it would be a good idea to have a refresher on what that is going to entail, and just what we can look forward to seeing coming out of this. It had been a while, and so we thought it would be worthwhile to get an update so that as we start to see the information coming in, everybody can know what it is that we're looking for and looking at. And so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the time over to Jeff.
Thank you, Tyler. Sorry. Going. Thank you for the invite. Always good to show up and talk and see the bright, smiling, shiny faces of PBAC. I apologize, my allergies are completely taken off this week. It's been one of those weeks where I'm struggling with my sinuses, so I might sound a little funny. And I will admit, after I present in any discussion, I do need to head out. I have class a little bit later here. Apologize for that. Okay, let's see, I need to move. I haven't been on Zoom in so long. I've never done this with you guys, so I'm gonna take you through a little back of the envelope exercise. Just why we keep going down this road on recharge. So a few decades ago, there was multiple studies that tried to indicate that water in the Grand Ronde is really old. About 20,000+ years beneath Moscow, up to 30,000 years beneath Pullman. I got here and I said, that's not possible. There's just no way it could be that old. So in walking through that, let's take, if you think of 95 running north-south through Moscow, kind of bisecting our basin here. If I take a cross section through that, it's about, somewhere around 12.5 miles from Paradise Ridge up to, the grade point. Sorry, I'm actually a little, let me back up again. The idea of water beneath our feet here in Moscow being potentially 20,000 years old implies that the water is actually moving really, really slow, up to a meter, about 3 feet a year. This is why I say this is not really possible. I just did a long tortuous pathway, the longest I could think of something beneath Moscow, a water particle pathway up to Moscow Mountain. And that works out. It's actually easier in metric. You do 20 kilometers, 20,000 years, 1 meter per year idea. That's a really slow average recharge idea. Now this is travel time, but I do use these interchangeably, although they have certain distinctions. But that's generally how we use age dating data. So the problem is if water is moving that slow in this basin, what we're pulling out should not be possible. We're pulling too much out for what the recharge rate is implied by those dates. So I'll give you a little bit of estimate for it, where I started going, bisecting along 95, a cross section, 9 miles from Paradise Ridge to the grade. Beneath our feet, this basin's about 1,200 feet deep till you hit the granite here. If I just add a 1 unit foot dimension to that cross section in itself would be about 57 million cubic feet or so. If I assume a pretty high porosity for this type of aquifer system at 20%, that's really way overestimated, I think. That gives us about 11.5 million cubic feet of available space for water, and that's from bottom of the aquifer to land surface, which we know is not true. So again, I'm way overestimating. And that's equivalent to about 86 million gallons, just in this 1 unit length here, all the way across the basin. So in just Moscow, just UI and the city, you guys pull out about 1 billion gallons a year. And that's ignoring everything upgrading, all the private wells, everything like that. The implication is 86 million gallons in each unit width of this basin in a very large overestimation would indicate you would have significantly been dropping water levels here, much more than you have been. So there's something wrong with these numbers here. And some of my work has kind of countered it, but we've never really completely discounted it. And again, I don't know how to get rid of this thing here. Oh, but mute yourself. Yeah. I'm gonna mute this somehow. But overall, the scenario is recharge is occurring differently than this perception of these past studies. There we go. So our idea of recharge, this is what we call a snowmelt driven mountain front recharge system. Yes, we get a fair amount of precipitation in what we consider the basin floor, but we get substantially much more along Moscow Mountain, substantially much more along Paradise Ridge. It builds up, it melts, which came early this year, and it moves through the interface zone, which is your primary recharge zone in this basin. So where the sediments that have eroded off Moscow Mountain, Paradise Ridge, and that the basalts are not present is your high permeable zone. That's where water can enter this system the easiest. Yes, there are other zones, but this is the dominant. So you got to think of kind of the eastern margin of this basin being the primary areas where water can enter into this aquifer system. And we've done different studies, kind of doing some unmixing of trying to get at those different sources, primarily seeing the snow melt dominated, some evaporated, longer travel pathways ideas. This has gone on for some time. Here's a different view of your aquifer system. Here's all the basalt layers coming in. There's actually 25 distinct units in this basin. the idea, and this is incorrect, this is John's work, and I know he's updated this one, but this is the one I found the most recent, that this zone over here where you have the high sediment concentration is where the recharge is actually occurring. That we're diving water into the subsurface, moving it into the system, therefore we're kind of moving in and then moving things laterally. So we've looked at this in a number of different ways. I've done it from the snowmelt side with the water isotopes. I've done it from the seismic background noise idea, trying to differentiate that and some other different tracers I've looked at. And then it's kind of been modeled with that work with Nick and Giacomo that I kind of helped feed some information to. So we have an idea how the system works conceptually and overall. When you dial in down, it gets very difficult, but it simplifies, the system simplifies moving towards its margin. It's really the basalts that cause us the most problem. We don't understand movement through them very well. We don't understand storage in them very well, but if we move into the sedimentary areas along the mountain front, that's where we can really start to understand things a little bit better. So past work of mine, and then also some from my soil and water colleagues, has indicated that there are certain zones along the eastern margin that are likely allowing water faster or slower into the system, but it's not really been discriminated. We've only seen little pieces of it overall. So this current project, to build on everything we've learned and use an existing data set and add to it, and that's the water isotopes. The water isotopes give us very good idea of water originating high up in the elevations versus stuff either coming in lower elevation or wandering its way down to a lower elevation before it gets into the subsystem. We're going to pair it with an analysis of CFCs. And now that is a traditional young water age dating system. So our goal is to sample all along the eastern margin. So 95 is our study boundary. We will work in some, however we get people to agree to allow us to sample their private wells from Paradise Ridge, wrapping Tomer, or in front of Tomer Butte through kind of our mixed middle area and then along Moscow Mountain. So our goal is 50 wells. We'll do the water isotopes, we'll do the CFCs paired with SF6. These are kind of traditional methods that will really allow us to kind of get a feel for the youngest water, which implicates it's moving the fastest versus other water that's taking its time trying to move it. And the goal is to discriminate your eastern margin of, yes, these are really hot zones. This is where stuff's getting in really good. And these are really, not so good. There's less permeable, other things going on. So this would be a traditional study, but you've allowed me to pair it with something a little more interesting to pique my interest too. I love working with the CFCs, but they are a method that's starting to wane because the CFCs are not as prevalent in the atmosphere. So I propose to you to pair it with another system. So if you remember the story of the CFCs, these were the chlorofluorocarbons, the industrial use that we released them into the atmosphere. They got incorporated into the hydrologic cycle, and they've been, they're coming down because we've decreased use. PFAS is now the hot topic, right? Everyone's, I don't know. Are all utilities now sampling for PFAS pretty much?
Required to.
Everyone's worried, yeah. It's in us, it's in the rain, it's in the groundwater, this and that. The interesting thing about PFAS is it's very similar to the CFCs. We've released it into the atmosphere, it's incorporated into the hydrologic cycle, and now it's coming out, and we're noticing it in surface waters, and we're actually starting noticing it in groundwaters too. Now, the interesting thing about them is that they've actually been in use for a long time. We've gone through many different types, PFAS, PFOA, PFOS, whichever ones you want to talk about. These have actually been in use since the 1930s. The idea is I have the water isotopes that will give me a feel for kind of origin of the groundwater that I sample from a well. CFCs will give me that traditional age dating look of how old that water might be. And then the PFAS is a relative age indicator, meaning if I see simply old PFAS compounds, meaning originated earlier in the development of these compounds, implies older water. If I see them plus newer stuff, then I'm starting to say it's younger water. So it's a multi-system data set of snowmelt, origin through isotopes, CFC traditional age dating in young groundwaters, overlain by a PFAS relative indicator. And it all goes into building, how can we discriminate those zones in the eastern margin that will tell us where the water is really trying to enter the system from. Just if you're thinking, PFAS, you're too early for this, everywhere we look, we're finding it now. I assume everyone's starting to see it. Here's just one. Here's all the different types they're finding just in the major lakes on the continent. USGS has been looking at this from groundwater probability standpoint. A lot of this is contaminated areas. We don't have that. We don't have big industrial zones, so we don't have contamination. The expectation is what PFAS we detect is actually in the precipitation that is moving into our shallow eastern margin system. So if we look at our zone, here's Moscow, here's Palouse Range, Paradise Ridge, Tomer Butte here. We're gonna be operating right along this zone here. We have to be outside the extent of the basalts in the sedimentary package before we hit the mountain front. So we will be bugging everyone we can that has wells in this zone to allow us to sample that. And I do have a request, I'll put it in early. If I could be on the Water Summit talk list to actually promote this, get people interested, whatever we can do to outreach. I've been able to sample a lot of private wells, but I've never tried this many. So I do need PBAC's help in trying to get public buy-in a bit.
I'd say that's likely.
Okay.
Just a small fee.
So here's a quick poll. Here's Moscow again. I've lost, there's Paradise Ridge. These are just out of IDWR's groundwater well maps. So we've actually already started looking at it, even though the project hasn't started. I worked with a student at Spokane Community College. They were doing GIS projects and they asked for, potential projects. So I had them do an initial screening for me. We're already set up with the labs. I don't exactly know when well sampling will occur. It's all depending on how we get people to agree to allow us to wells and try to consolidate them and then get out. You guys are funding a PhD student for 2 years under this project. I have a current geology student that's going to help with the sampling, and I'm also starting to recruit a GIS MS student to help. That is all UI supported stuff. And I've also picked up an undergrad that's going to start here in mid-May that's funded through an NSF project. So I'm trying to supplement things as much as possible. Overall, the next 2 years, I expect us to be in sampling mode for at least a year. It really depends, again, on how we get people to agree to access. And then it takes bit for data. We'll go into our initial round of analysis and trying to synthesize all these things together. And the ultimate goal for you is that kind of interpretation of hot or cold zones on recharge along the eastern margin. And then the idea for the PhD student, his second 2 years will be funded internally through my department, is we will synthesize this data into all the other data that's been done outside of the eastern margin. So we're going to take a really kind of big global look at everything that we've done, including the stuff that was just done by Louis, the Woods Hole folk. So goal is to get that initial thing and then do a larger synthesis to try and understand the system as much as we can.
Jeff, what does sampling look like to a landowner?
Actually, really easy. It's basically me finding a spigot near the wellhead. As long as there's a tap on it, I just connect up. I have a little flow through chamber. We have a little field probe that will record. Just got to make sure the system's been purged enough that it's stable.
Okay.
And sampling for water isotopes, CFCs, and PFAS actually is pretty easy. Nothing really involved.
Okay, thanks.
And you can share the results with whomever, right?
Yeah, I always offer it up to landowners and they, I mean, that was one of the concerns of PBAC is, well, do we want to tell people about PFAS in private wells? Who knows what people are concerned with these days on it.
I mean, it's certainly more on people's radar now, but we're all testing for it. So I don't think it's anything that it doesn't hurt to let people know what's in their water.
What's going on these days? Yeah. I agree. The rest of it wouldn't be that useful to a landowner. Isotope signals, a bit like, who cares? CFCs, SF6, yeah, they're industrial compounds, but they're so small concentration. And I expect the PFAS to be really, really tiny concentrations.
I was gonna ask you just the level of sensitivity, just because we're non-detect in all our wells. We had one very, very low level detect in one of the Wanapum wells that's not active. But that was it. And so there's, it'll be, I suspect you're gonna find within our basin pretty low concentration.
It should be, yeah. Luckily, and actually we'll be working with Alturas, who's actually been doing a lot of PFAS analysis, and they've dialed it down pretty good. And I don't know, you guys on the new EPA method that came out? Was it last year?
It was.
Or 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I think.
Yeah. So the method has been improving. And we were down at the nanogram type, which should be sufficient. And honestly, concentration doesn't mean anything to this. It's solely detection.
Yeah.
Whether I can.
And the specific detection of which compound you've got, yeah.
Yeah, because it's relative to which ones you actually see that fit the timeline of their use.
Right.
So that's it. That's the goal.
Any questions?
So did you say you're sampling, you're trying to get between the south end of Moscow Mountain and Paradise? Is that where you're trying to sample at, or what is your sample area?
Yeah, it's hard to see superficially because there's kind of an underlying, we have to be beyond the penetration of all the basalts. So there's different layers, but there isn't a greatest extent of one of the basalts beneath us, and we have to be along its periphery. We can't be punching through there because we're getting into deeper, older stuff, typically that might not really work for us. So we're really going to be only in the sedimentary areas, mountain front in. I'm trying to think. When we sampled for isotopes in the past on some private wells, we were only along Moscow Mountain. We were Marine and Nat Creek parking areas down, if that makes sense, till it starts to flatten out, basically. And then you start getting too much of the basalt interference.
Right. I only ask because I've got a lot of clients through that area.
Oh,
and
perfect.
I mean, that's an easy way to ask them if they would be willing to let you come up, but I need to know, is it worth asking them or not?
So right now I have a database of the wells we have pre-selected, and that would be perfect. I would say I have to have the student kind of go through it and map it all out, and then any connections you guys have, we would say these are the ones we're looking at. If you have connections, can you make a introduction for us?
So maybe at some point this summer, you could share that and I could help with the committee, like.
Yeah, we could distribute to the
know,
committee and see if there's, it might as well knock out the context that we might have and try and get that taken care of.
Yeah, Chad might have some people. I'd be surprised if you didn't have know some of the same folks.
Right, yeah, some of the ones that you're looking for, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
And then Jeff, just to recap, my understanding of why this information might be valuable to PBAC in our mission for sustainable water supply is that as we gain more information and can further refine where we're seeing younger versus older water, we could better identify potential zones where there is enhanced recharge.
Yep.
And so if there is an opportunity for
Stop sharing.
passive recharge or areas where it might make sense to build some shallow ponds and try and promote the passive recharges, we have the water melt, that could be really beneficial for us as we work to stabilize the aquifer. Would that be accurate?
Yes, sorry. Beneficial to you is zones of high recharge you could use in the future if you wanted to do enhanced recharge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was that original talk of, I think it fell off pretty early, damming some of the creeks over this side or something. If you actually did that over a high recharge zone, that actually is beneficial.
Yeah.
The others, if you did actually want to, I mean, you wouldn't really expect to pipe anything up and do that, but it would be more a manipulation of that. Or
the construction of some shallow ponds that we divert during high flow times into one of those basins that might have more recharge.
that's actually a really good point. I don't know how many people have remembered, there have been talks of shallow ponds over the years and they were all around here. And the implication is that would do nothing.
Yeah.
It might send a little bit to the top of the Wampum, but wouldn't really do anything for you. It has to be off in the sedimentary
Right.
edge. The other thing is really if maybe long-term, if there's significant development in the basin, you don't really want to put impermeable areas over high recharge zones.
Right.
Or something like that, or industry over high recharge
Mhm.
zones. That's more just the water quality protection.
Yep.
Side of things.
So yeah, that's what we're excited about this research. We think it really helps us refine a lot of that data so that we can make some of those decisions as we move forward. Does anyone else have any questions for Jeff?
Jeff, so as far as timeline for sampling, would that be fall or would it be next spring?
I'm gonna tell my PhD student, Isaac Hall, will be here next month.
Okay.
As soon as he gets a handful that he can consolidate together, then he goes
Okay.
out.
So it'll be, all right.
So we kind of need, we can't go individually, we need to kind of group, so we can send groups of
Okay.
samples to the labs. So I'm hoping by midsummer, at least we'll have tried some.
Okay.
But it all depends on those connections to the landowners and access.
Great.
We'll find some.
Yeah.
Gotta know a guy.
Yeah.
Gotta know a guy that knows a guy.
And you know a horse.
All right.
I want one last thing just to reiterate, if you guys ever want to promote this type of stuff to the state, this use of PFAS, no one's done it before. This is bleeding edge stuff for a look of this type of nature.
Meg, did you hear that? Meg heard that.
Jeff, did Woods Hole, did they use PFAS at all?
No, so that's a good reminder. The first paper is about to come out. I
Okay.
just got
That was
notice
my
from
follow-up.
Nature.
Yeah.
And that's a slightly different story. That one's mostly about the gases coming from deep into our basin that I kind of hinted at with the noble gases and tried to reconfigure those carbon 14 dates. What they found is, yeah, it supports that theory right now.
Okay.
So just to interject, so is this going in Nature?
Let's see, this one is in Nature Geosciences.
Okay.
And the second one, it's in updated review stage, and that one's going, National Academies.
Okay.
Science, so.
Well, Jeff, thank you. We appreciate your continued work in the basin. It's really important and we really appreciate it.
Oh, no, anytime. I really appreciate the time and working on these things. It's a challenging system to work with, but it's been a lot of fun.
Great. All right, next item we've got on the agenda, Mike, we've got a water conservation outreach education update.
So just really quickly, Erin had a conflict. She couldn't make it, but she's super busy. Her calendar is just about full. There's the event at East City Park in Musco Saturday. There's the campus event next Tuesday. There's something coming up with the city of Genesee. And that's just like in the next few days. So she's.
Is that at the library?
It's with the library. I don't know if it's at the library, but probably. But she's really doing a great job of getting outreach going both to adult and youth audiences.
And the social media presence has been good and consistent, so that's been great to
I'm
see.
really impressed with her social media
Good.
program she's put together.
Does anybody have any questions for Mike about our outreach programs?
When do we lose her?
She's through August.
Through August.
There is, so I did get an update from AmeriCorps, and I don't know if Tom has anything to add, but just an update to AmeriCorps that the Doge folks are looking at it. But they aren't expecting anything for existing programs. And they don't know. There's a lot of speculation, of course, but I don't expect anything to impact Aaron's program going forward. I think it's anybody's guess right now.
Commissioner Lamar, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I just think that's accurate. We have not heard any indication that they're going to cut the current contract at all. So we're continuing to monitor it and hope that we don't have any additional problems and hope that we continue to get funded for next year as well.
Great. Thank you.
My question was just, what did you mention an event on campus next Tuesday?
Yes, Earth Jam is the annual University of Idaho Earth Day. It's 12 to 3 at the place where they do those things. I forget the name of it.
The ISUB or whatever we're calling it now.
Yeah, you know where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We will be there. We're actually next door to the city of Moscow. So we're in case Kelly or Aaron needs to take a break, they're working together really closely these days.
Great. All right. We'll move on then to the next item on our agenda, which is subcommittee reports. I'll kick off with the Clearwater RFQ process. We've had some good progress since our last meeting on that front. Mike and I generated and submitted a requested report to the Idaho Water Resource Board. They've got a process by which they're starting some quarterly reporting on some of their grant funded projects. And so we got that information sent into them, and it was nice to have some good progress to report. I think that they'll be happy about that. They have their meeting in May here in Moscow, and so we've reached out and offered whatever support that they want. Yeah. Offered tours or presentation or whatever they might want to see at that point. We also received the draft proposal from HDR, and that was sent out and reviewed by our technical committee. Mike and I were able to put the comments together and really appreciate everybody's review of that document. That was very helpful, and there were some really good comments. It was apparent that HDR appreciated that. Mike and I met with Jeff Hansen with HDR and reviewed those comments with him to make sure that he understood what it was we were talking about. Based on that conversation, he went back. He's generating a new proposal. He also has one of the primary things that we had identified was that there were 4 in-person touch points on the public involvement front, and we have more than that identified that we know we're going to need, and so we requested more. And so the new proposal they put together has 8 built into it. If that gets pared back, the cost will just come in lower than that, but we also have a per cost so that if there's more that we feel like we need to add, I would the revised proposal is coming in right about $330K, of which we had 182.5 that was funded by the Water Resource Board. You may recall that we flagged about 200,000 in PBAC funding to help support this, and so we're going to come in below that anticipated number with the formal request to PBAC for funding for this. And so the process as it stands currently is we'll get a revised proposal based on the feedback that we've gotten. We'll do a final review of that. I'm anticipating that should come back pretty clean based on the conversation that we had with them. And so when we have that document ready to review, then we have a two-step process. The one step is there'll be two agreements that have to be generated and entered into. One is an agreement between the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee through U of I and the city for the supplemental funding. And the other agreement is between the city and HDR for the project. And so those are the two agreements that need to be in place. We have a little flexibility with this as far as timing. The priority will be to get really the agreement between the city and HDR going. Since we already have the Idaho Water Resource Board funding committed, that agreement's already in place between the city and the Water Resource Board. And I have money in the city of Moscow's water budget that is earmarked for water alternative supply work. And so that money I can use to float and pay out invoices while we seek reimbursement from the state of Idaho. So I have sufficient funds. I have $80,000 that's earmarked in my water budget to go toward that type of effort. And so that'll be enough to float us through the Idaho Water Resource Board. And so really on the city of Moscow's end, what we'll need to have is some sort of motion by this committee that gives us the confidence that, yep, we're going to commit to that level of funding, even if it takes a little bit longer to actually get the formal agreement in place. If there's a motion by the committee that I can point to that says, yeah, PBAC is committed to these funds, then that will be enough for us on our end that I can go to my city council and say, hey, there's been a formal action, it's been committed to, we're getting the contract in place. I don't anticipate it taking too terribly long, but it will have to, obviously we'll have a vote required from this committee to approve that. And then we'll have the Moscow City Council that ultimately has to approve both of those contracts as well, the contract with HDR and the agreement with PBAC for the funding. Am I missing anything in that, Mike?
No, you captured it a whole lot better than I could have.
So does
That's
anyone?
a lot.
It's a little bit of a convoluted process, but we have a structure for this. This is an identical process to our 2020 work that we did where it was contracted through the city of Moscow. So we already have a format. There's been some change over at the University of Idaho in the finance department. And so Mike and I have sent the agreement from 2020. In 2020, PBAC transferred the entire committed level of funding to the city, and the city held it in a separate account, billed against it. And then if there was any left over, the agreement stipulated that gets sent back from the city to be reimbursed to the PBAC coffers within the University of Idaho. We don't know if that'll be a structure that the current finance folks at U of I will be comfortable with and or legal. And so if they're not comfortable with that and they want to have a reimbursement situation where the invoices come in to the city can pay and then seek reimbursement, I'll still have that funding available. So that's an acceptable structure to the city as well. And so we can also go through that process. And so depending on what we hear back from U of I Finance, we'll then structure the agreement accordingly and get the ball rolling on that. It's exciting. It's fun to be at this point, and it was great to. I was happy to see that HDR really. I thought they captured well what we were going for. I think they understand what we hope to have come out of this process. And in my meeting with Jeff Hansen, I was also encouraged that he seemed to really understand our comments that we provided. The one Steve, I just want to mention that the one comment that we'll follow up on. You had a comment that I think was really important and pertinent about the value or lack thereof of the ranking process based on the way that may or may not be structured. That's something that as we get moving into that, Steve, we may have a separate meeting that we'll have with you, with HDR, and maybe with Jeff or some other representative from the technical subcommittee, just to make sure that they're understanding what we might want to see there.
Do you feel like the cadence of the PBAC meetings are in step with that approval process? I'm just thinking, we talked briefly about this at the technical committee, whether or not we're going to need to, can we wait till the next PBAC meeting to provide that approval you just mentioned, or do we need to meet on some interim basis, just to keep that
We-
moving.
We have the ability, I believe in the bylaws, to have an interim meeting vote.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things I just wanted to gauge the feeling of the committee on here today is that there is no sort of Damocles on this as far as, the Water Resource Board wants to see progress. I believe that we're certainly showing progress. And so there's no real hard deadline that's like, oh, we have to get this done by September of next year to have the project complete or something. There's no something there. We want to keep the ball moving. We want to move with urgency. That's been something we've committed to our constituents and we want to keep doing. But so that said, I think that where I may ask for that off meeting vote would be if in order if we get everything in place, I'm able to get it through U of I legal and through my legal. And based on the timing between the PBAC meetings and my city council rotation, it means it's gonna delay us 6 weeks. If we don't do that, then that may be when we ask for that off session vote, just so that we can keep the ball rolling. Because if it means, okay, if I hit this, I can hit my council cycle and we can save ourselves a month and a half, then I think that that's probably worthwhile to do. Any thoughts, questions about that?
Thank you.
Okay.
What does the off session vote look like? I mean, do we do it by email? Are we making a meeting?
I could announce the meeting, with 24 hours notice and conduct it via Zoom.
Okay.
And the quorum would mean we need not over half of the members, but instead we would need over half of the voting entities. So the minimum number of people to constitute a quorum could be 4.
Yeah, so what I would anticipate doing in that case, Kara, is, calling and noticing a meeting, having it be an online meeting, where we can present the comprehensive data and try and get a motion and an approval through that process.
Great. Yeah, I was just curious.
Okay, any other questions about that? All right, it's exciting. We'll be moving right along.
I guess I have one more follow-up. Sorry, Tyler.
Yeah, please.
So, they are going to revise the scope of work. Is that gonna come back before the technical subcommittee or the whole
Yes.
subcommittee or the whole committee?
Well, I anticipate initially sending it back just to make sure that what they've done is meeting the expectations of the technical committee that commented. It will come back before it'll certainly be sent out to the whole committee before we take action on it.
Okay.
So that anybody has an option. So if we end up having to schedule an off-cycle meeting or we want to schedule an off-cycle meeting for a vote, then we would send out the SOW to the entire committee in advance of that, so that anybody who wanted to make comment, we could capture that before we get into that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, one other thing I'll mention is I followed up and I'm waiting to hear back. I had some communication with the governor's office, with the state of Idaho, with Governor Little's office this week. And reiterated our support for the potential for the water summit being hosted, a North Idaho Water Summit, and our willingness to serve as host for that. So they're positive about that. Heard from both Jamie in the governor's office and Jake about a desire for that. And so I think that we'll have some follow-up on that, but I think that'd be pretty neat if we were able to host that up here in the north. And I think there's a desire on their part to have something up here in the north with so much attention that has been put in the Snake River in the southeast. I think that as they're nearing completion on that, and that's getting wrapped up, I think that there's a desire to show some love up here in the north. So that'd be great.
What's the timeline on that?
I have, the initial timeline when we had the communication with Jake about that was, potentially this summer. And so we talked with him about, if it would be a good idea to try and co-locate that with the water summit.
Yeah.
And so that was the last that we talked about that. After my conversation with Jamie in the governor's office, I reached back out to Jake. And so I'll let everyone know when we hear back, but that's something with the communication subcommittee. We can staff that and see what we figure out. All right, that is it for me. Budget, do you have a budget update, Mike?
Yeah, I've visited with Rusty and reviewed everything. So just a few things. One is that we're in the process of consolidating our UI accounts. So a lot of you will recall that the new interstate agreement does not differentiate research and administrative budgets. So probably next month, and if not soon, whenever the accounting folks get to it, the financial update will have one less line,
Yeah.
but the numbers will be the same. The kind of the thing that I want the committee to really be aware of is that over the next year, we're going to be spending over half of our budget reserve. It looks like, that's my projection, so that would be because of the spending for the Langman project. So we still have not transferred the $90,000 for the first half of that. I'm going to push to have that done by the end of the fiscal year. But then there's going to be about the same amount next year. And then the whatever we use to supplement the IWRB funds.
Which looks like it'll be somewhere in the $150,000 range.
So so at the end of the coming fiscal year, so let's say approximately 14 months from now, instead of having a $700,000 balance in our account, we'll have close to $300,000 balance in our account. And that's a big change, but that's still over a year of our baseline budget. And in my mind, that's what the money's for.
When Mike and I discussed this in our meeting last week, those of us who've been sitting on this for a while know that the biggest concern wasn't under accumulation in that budget, it was over accumulation in that budget. And what are we doing with that budget? That budget's for a purpose. And when, in particular, the University of Idaho and Washington State University looked at this, and when we really generated a spending plan, it wasn't a spending plan to try and rein in our spending. It was a spending plan to make sure that if we're gathering these funds, we're using these funds toward a worthwhile purpose. And that, I think that's been our commitment to the entities, is that if we're asking for it, it's because we're going to put it to good use and we're going to work actively on a solution. And I feel confident with the work that we've done that we can show that that's where that money is going, is toward active work toward solutions. And so this, I don't see this as a bad thing. I think this is us following through on a promise that we made and a commitment we made to the entities that we were going to be working to spend the money to and put it to good use.
So, and then just one final thing, it's likely that assuming this does come to pass, at some time in the next year, Rusty will ask for a policy for how much money should we have in the bank. And he mentioned 90 days worth of operating funds, and that's pretty typical. I actually did that for years.
Yeah.
Just because of our funding cycle, that's how we had to do it. So we don't need to do that now, but
it's a good idea for us to
when that
formalize that as policy, though.
I just want the committee to be aware of these things.
Questions?
Is there an update on the stakeholder engagement group?
Once we have HDR under contract, then we will schedule, our commitment to the stakeholder engagement group was that our next meeting would be to introduce them to the consultant that would be working on the project. And so once we have the contract in place with HDR, that is one of the budgeted for meetings that we will have, an in-person meeting, is to have we'll have the project manager, at very least the project manager, one other representative from HDR, and their public involvement specialist will come out and meet with the stakeholder engagement group. So we'll be setting that meeting once the contract's in place. I would anticipate that meeting being probably early to mid-summer, based on just kind of the timeline of getting through council.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is I'm sort of trying to think. Would it be important or prudent for the stakeholders to be aware of our fiscal policy and how we're moving forward with that?
Well, I'm foreseeing a fiscal policy for a year from now.
Well, I mean, but fiscal policy is maybe not the right word, but just how we're spending our money on these big projects.
I think a project update is certainly
Sure.
appropriate for the stakeholder engagement group.
Because
Mhm.
the reason, and again, that's the secondary point. Let's go with the tertiary point is at some point, we're going to want to ask the entities for more money. And the more people understand how we're
Sure.
using the money on these significant projects that we've sort of been promising for years. And then the stakeholders as individuals in their own communities can go to the entities and say, hey, how about another X number of dollars? Because how long has it been since we've, it's been 4 years, 4 years since we had since we upped the ante on the.
We upped it last summer.
Last summer we
Was
did.
it last summer?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we've got a laid out process for those increases and it upped
Sort
last
of what I
year.
thought, I was just refresh my memory, it's just that with things being in the world being the way they are right now, I think more planning, more steps in that process, the more tools we have in our toolbox
Mhm.
to say, okay, if this goes away, how do we manage?
Yes, there'll definitely be a update to the stakeholder engagement group.
Yeah, and
As soon as we have something concrete to tell.
we'll give them
Right.
we'll give them a project update and
This
then
one-
update them on the major expenditures for sure.
Yeah, because.
This is moving really fast, the way these things go
Yeah.
right now, so.
All right, any other questions for Mike with regards to the budget? All right, hearing none, communication, we did not meet this month. We're kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern as we get contracts in place and then it's really gonna kick off. It's gonna start to get a little bit crazy. We will certainly keep everyone updated as conversations about the Water Resource Board meeting in Moscow and or the Water Summit, Governor's Water Summit, the potential comes to fruition, so. Technical, Jeff?
We met just prior to this meeting, talked about 3 things: research colloquium, if I can say that word.
I love it.
It's
a great word.
And what form that might take. So Lana was gonna reach out to some of her constituents a little bit and try to just kind of feel out what would be productive and I think the consensus was fall might be the soonest to do that. So anyway, we'll just keep poking at that, see what form that takes and make that a productive endeavor. We talked about the Pullman irrigation ordinance and Kara is working on a plan to try to crunch those numbers in more detail, but it, in all likelihood, will take a couple of years of data really to be 100% confident that what kind of difference we're making there. And we talked about the HCR scope and some of the comments that Kara and I had provided, and I think we're looking forward to seeing their response to those comments formalized so we can proceed with that. Is that a good summary, Mike?
I think so.
You think that's good?
Thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? You must have done it right, Jeff. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Other reports and announcements. I wanted to mention I attended on Tuesday night. There was a showing at the Kenworthy Theater in Moscow of The Covenant of the Salmon People, which is the documentary that the Nez Perce.
It's incredible. It's
so
so
good.
incredible.
And they had the tribe's communication manager, Rachel Wilson, was in attendance doing a Q&A along with tribal staff member. And really great Q&A as well. It was really well done. And I was able to chat with Rachel after the event had concluded and had a really good talk with her about our work and our appreciation of our interaction with the Nez Perce tribe. So I encourage you, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's really well done, really well made. And that's my report announcement. Anybody have anything else?
The Water Summit board met here about 2 weeks ago. And we're gonna flex on timing. Partly, we just want to have it earlier in the afternoon, so our keynote doesn't start speaking at 7 at night.
Yeah.
So we're gonna move that up, but again, we didn't talk about pairing with the state summit, but I think that might be a nice little combination too.
Yeah.
Talking with Pacific Institute about some of the work they're doing, National Weather Service. Also talking with Cascade Water Alliance around a governance model that they use as a water purveyor to a number of jurisdictions on the west side.
Oh, cool.
And Mike, well, might that look like for us?
Mhm.
And as we continue to develop a water supply, how would we manage, own, fund, et cetera? So just kind of maybe start moving that direction about a governance model.
Nice.
And then a conversation with the City of Colorado Springs Water Efficiency Plan. I think I shared some of that with you.
Mhm.
They did some really cool stuff.
They
So-
did. That's
So we
neat.
may bring them in and just kind of give us some good ideas.
Great.
So a few things, and then potential keynote would be Lucas Bessier wrote a book called Running Out, but it's about the Ogallala
Mm.
aquifer. He's a anthropology professor from University of Oklahoma.
That'd be really
Stay
interesting.
tuned.
Great, thanks, Paul. Anyone else? Okay, our next meeting will be on May 15th. Same place, and we'll get here early, so if someone tries to come take it from us, we can fight them off.
We get along with facilities. There are,
And with that, we're gonna recess into our executive session. And so if those who are committee members can stick around for a bit, and everyone else, thank you very much for your attendance.
And we need to stop the recording for the exec session, right?
thank you for the reminder.
I got you.
Right there on the bottom mic, pause, stop recording.